It is time for a little college football season win totals betting where we're bringing in the trailblazer himself, Chris Andrews. Follow him on Twitter at Andrews Sports. He's a sportsbook director at South Point Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Chris, welcome in, buddy. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure, Chris. And I say the trailblazer because what? It's been about a year, maybe two, since you started doing this with putting out college football season win totals on every team, all 130 teams. Has it been 1 or 2 years now, Chris?
Well, it's been two.
Okay.
I was thinking it might even be three. I'd have to go back and look, but at least two. We put up every single team, and it's been great for the South Point. Really a terrific marketing tool, and we make a little bit of money on it.
Have you? So over, I guess I might add that wrong, 2, maybe 3 years. You are overall up on the season win totals, taking action on it?
Yeah, not much, but a little bit. And when we throw in the games of the year, we're up pretty good.
Okay, good stuff. And as far as taking action on the college football season win totals, do you notice on any limit bet that you take? I believe it's $500 on the group of five teams and $1,000 on the power five teams that you will move on any limit bet. And if I'm incorrect on any of the limits, let us know.
Well, those were the limits to open.
Okay.
And yeah, guys firing at me the first day. They're some of the all stars. They're really good, so we keep them down a little bit. Uh, and as of August 1st, kind of the gloves are off. We, take a lot higher limits. But even now, I tell guys if you want to make a bet, come to the counter, bring your cash, we'll go from there. And really, our philosophy around here is if you come to the counter with cash, within reason, we try not to say no to anybody. Of course, I mean, I'm not gonna let you bet 10 million on something, but we're gonna we'll let you fire pretty good.
No, good stuff. And I know you run one of the best sports books in the industry. So definitely a shout out to that. And if you're in Las Vegas, make sure to go by and give Chris say hello to Chris at the South Point Hotel and Casino. They got a good thing going there. Chris, as far as like conceptually speaking, going into the room, putting out numbers on these college football season win totals, how many minds go into it before you open up the marketplace?
Well, really, three of us.
Okay.
Um, I have my ratings, and Vinny Maiolo, he helps me. He's on VSiN pretty much every day. Pretty good handicapper. He helps him with the college basketball and the college football and the pro football as far as that. And then Jimmy Vaccaro. Jimmy's not really a numbers maker, but we float all these numbers by Jimmy before we put them up, and he tells us we're a little too high, a little too low, what he thinks the public will do with it. So really, three minds go into it. They go on the board, and after that, like I said, we got the best guys in town firing at us.
Okay, Chris. And what about teams so far since you've opened it up? How long has it been? And what teams have really moved the marketplace the most so far?
Well, we opened up towards the end of May. I think about the middle of May, something like that. About the 20th, 21st. I was writing out some of the teams, and you have a pretty sophisticated clientele that watches these, so they know these are pretty big moves. But I tell some people, well, what are the big movers? And I'm looking, like Kansas State went from 6 to 6.5. That's quite a bit of money. That's a half a game move. That's actually quite a bit. And guys just kind of look and say, "Wow, is that all? That's one of the bigger movers." Well, it is, and that's that's a lot of that. That's a big move. But like I said, part of that is I think we did a really good job of these, and the other one is it takes a lot of money. We do move them on a limit bet, but we get two-way action. We've had quite a bit of two-way action this year. So sometimes a half a game, and I'm looking. There's one or two teams that have moved a whole game, and that's really pretty significant.
And which teams are those? Is one of them the Texas Longhorns?
No, that was not one. That one we've had pretty good two-way action on.
Okay.
There's some of the more obscure teams, like Western Kentucky went from 4.5 over to 5.5. Troy went from 8.5 to 7.5. So like I said, some of the teams that maybe a little off the radar of like your normal handicapper. California went from 5.5 to 6.5. Uh, Bowling Green from 5.5 to 4.5. So these are teams that, like I said, not your typical square better would be that interested in, but your guys that do this for a living, a half a game means an awful lot. A little bit of juice means an awful lot. So they fire pretty good, even they think you're just off by a little bit.
Yeah, and Chris, I would think the smaller teams are where it's more difficult for you guys. I guess, like you said, Vinny and Jimmy there with you. Would you say that the group of five teams, like the Sun Belt Conference USA teams, are more of a challenge for y'all?
They are, and that's why when we open up, and I have some guys coming in from all over the country, and they're fine with a nickel bet, and actually I'm fine with it too because it kind of puts me in the right direction. I
Right.
mean, let's we know the way this is: Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, Auburn. They're going to be right up there with some of the best teams. Well, what's Arkansas State going to be? What's Appalachian State going to be? It's a little more obscure. And I like to have their opinion, and they back their opinion with dollars, but kind of sets you straight as to what the value of a certain team is. And like I said, now that we've been bet quite a bit, well, we don't have too much action coming in right now, just because it's kind of a lull in the as far as
Mhm.
the season goes. The teams will be going to camp in about probably about another month, and then somebody just scored in the World Cup. I'm not sure who it was. But anyway, they'll be going to camp in about another month, and we'll be getting a lot more action, and that's when we will increase our limits on these things.
Okay, that makes sense. And you bring up Arkansas State, the Red Wolves. Do you find one? I mean, they're the highest win total in the Sun Belt, I believe. And you also brought up Troy getting bet down. I know that they lost their
Yeah.
quarterback, and in the Sun Belt's kind of turned into kind of a three-headed monster with Appalachian State, Troy, and Arkansas State. So would you find that there's correlation between Troy getting bet down and maybe Arkansas State getting bet up, or do they kind of have nothing to do with each other?
Oh no, they have a lot to do with each other. Yeah, that's
Mm,
that's one game, and again, to the average guy, one game doesn't seem that much, but one game is going to either put you in the top level bowl game from that conference, or
mhm.
you might be scrambling for a spot in any bowl game. So one game does mean quite a bit, and we like I said, we try to follow all the injuries and all the whatever situation is going on with some of these smaller teams. It's just not as easy though as like I said, so the Ohio States and Alabama of the world.
Yeah, for sure, Chris. And I mean, talking about the Alabamas and Ohio States of the world, are there any big name teams that you want to throw out there? Maybe teams that you're worried on have taken a lot of money and don't want them to hit either over or under so far?
Not really. That's like I said, I thought we did a pretty good job, and my kudos to the guys that helped me. I think we did pretty good. Interesting. We got bet on Alabama under. I
Okay.
opened them 11 under. I'm down to 11 under $1.35, which again is a little bit of a probably a move a lot more than people think. Another team that I had opened, Michigan 9 under, and I'm up to 9.5 over. That's a pretty significant move there. They also bet me pretty strong Michigan the first week against Notre Dame. So I think I may have, well, in the eyes of the public anyway, or at least of my betters, I had Michigan a little underrated and Notre Dame a little overrated. But we'll see, because I'm not that crazy about Michigan this year, and I know there's a lot of varying opinions on that, but we'll see how the season unfolds.
Yeah, for sure, Chris. And what about down in the Southeast, like Miami and Florida State? Another kind of two teams that would be correlated. I see Florida State, you opened 7.5. Now you're up to 8. In Miami, what you opened 10 down to 9.5 now, I believe. I guess I could be off on the current line now, but
Uh,
have
oh, yeah. I think Miami's going to be very, very good this year. And Florida State. One thing I say all the time is, when you get a new coach, they
Mhm.
always sound great on the way in. They don't
Yeah.
always sound so great on the way out. So I'm kind of, when you've been in this as long as I have, you're always just a little bit skeptical.
Chris, we might have lost you there. Are you still with us?
And We good?
Okay, yeah, now we're good. We got you back. We just lost you for about 5 or 10 seconds there. So on the Miami Florida State thing, if you could just repeat that.
Well, like I was saying, they're all all these new coaches look good on the way in.
Yeah.
They don't look so good on the way out. Florida State's a terrific program and has been for 30 years or so. But before we start hanging too many accolades on them, I just want to see a little bit of production. I'm in this almost 40 years. I'm just highly skeptical on anything new. So we have to see.
Okay, and yeah, you say like the coaches look good on the way in. So obviously you bring that into the number you're putting out. But so with teams like maybe Auburn or Florida or Georgia, where they're returning their head coaches, or actually not Florida, just Auburn and Georgia. I see you got 10.5 on Georgia. Auburn, you got 9. Does that factor into the number as far as returning your head coach and maybe giving them a half a game, or does that go into the handicap?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when you see a guy who you think will be a real good head coach, which let's take Kirby at Georgia. I think he's going to be real good. A lot of times that second year is when you really see some improvement. Third year, even more so. But
Absolutely.
I expect really good things out of Georgia this year. They should be right in the national hunt, and really a talented team, well coached, and again, I have a lot of respect for that program, and I have them pretty high, and I think that's where they should be.
Yeah, and I said Florida returning their head coach. Actually, they don't with Dan Mullen coming in. And Georgia and Florida, I see both have bye weeks before, I guess you could say, the largest outdoor cocktail party. Florida opened 7.5, I believe you opened them, now up to 8. With a new coach, do you think that's a little bit, looking shiny on the way in, and maybe the Florida Gators could be a good bet under?
I think they might be. Yeah, I mean that's one of them that we have some strong opinions on a couple teams. I think, which I find fascinating. Sometimes it's not always the highest echelon team, or the highest number team. But Florida is one of those sides that we've got a little bit of money both ways, and I think people look at. Well, first of all, I think Mullen's a hell of a coach, really.
Hmm.
He's walking into a situation that there's a reason the past coach got let go in midseason or after whenever he got let go. Uh, but there needs to be some improvement there, and I think that is a real good program. And I think in a matter of time, they will be right up there among the best in the SEC. But that's a challenge in the SEC. Every week you're playing somebody pretty tough. You look at a guy like Sumlin at Texas when he was at Texas A&M. You'd think that was a pretty good program, but you got to face one of the highest rated teams in the country every single week. It's hard to get wins all the time.
Yeah, in order for one team to move up, another team's got to move down. So, in the SEC West, it gets tough there with Texas A&M. Chris, what about when you're putting out numbers? Do you take into account any writers like Bill Connolly? Do you read his stuff before you put out the numbers on the smaller teams?
Oh yeah, Bill Conley. That's one of my favorite guys. I value his opinion greatly. We've had him on our show. I haven't met him personally, but we have talked, on the air. I follow him on Twitter. I don't know if he follows me or not. I wish he would. I'm not sure. But yeah, he's a real smart guy. So yeah, I try to. He's one of the guys, one of my go-to guys that I like to read. But yeah, there's a lot of them out there, and just try to find the ones that make sense. A lot of them, sound like they make sense, and then when you read into it a little bit more, they're just kind of shooting from the hip, and you got to
Right.
kind of ignore some of the guys.
Are there any other writers you kind of put in high regards, maybe just below Bill Connolly?
Boy, I'd have to look as far as names. I mean, Phil Steele is a name that always comes out every year,
Right.
and he always puts out some good information in his magazine. But you got to kind of wait for that. A lot of them, I honestly don't always know their names, but I like to look at like each conference kind of summary, and there's usually one at the end of a season. Then during the course of the season, when you're following the recruiting patterns of different teams. So there's, I'd hate to start naming names. I'd have to look at it a little more closely. But Conley's definitely one of the guys I respect the most.
Yeah, and we're talking to Chris
Pat
Andrews. Oh, go ahead.
Pat Forty is another guy I like to read. He's kind of all over the place. he seems to get some pretty good information.
Okay, Pat Forty as well. And yeah, we're talking to Chris Andrews, Sportsbook Director at South Point Hotel and Casino. Follow him on Twitter at Andrews Sports. Chris, you bring up recruiting. How much do you think the recruiting rankings go into your numbers? Do you actually, put that at high regards for freshmen and even JUCOs coming in?
Not for freshmen, no. What I'm really looking for is more like a 3, 4 year pattern, maybe even a 5 year pattern. And like I
Okay.
said, some of them are, kind of easy to follow. Again, keep mentioning Alabama and Ohio State; they're continuously at the top. Penn State, which I am a Penn State fan from Pennsylvania, they've done really well last couple of years, and you can see the results on the field. What's different is when you start seeing some of these lower schools, like Western Michigan for a long
Hmm.
time when PJ Fleck was there. Their their recruiting was way better than anybody else in the MAC, and again, it showed up on the field. Uh, so he was a great salesman. He was also a pretty darn good coach, and those are the kind of things you try to pick up some tidbits on that. Now LSU, their recruiting is fantastic. I'm not that high on Ed Orgeron as a coach, so I think I'm looking here. Our season win total on LSU 7.5 under 30, not real high. They have some great athletes here, and we'll see if Ed Orgeron can get the results on the field. I remain a little skeptical.
Yeah, they got that SEC West schedule, plus starting off with Miami, I believe, as well. So a 10-win team to start off. But Chris, is there anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down for the watchers?
I just wrote down a couple teams that really hardly moved, but we had a ton of two-way action on, and I'll throw them out.
Okay.
LSU, Kansas, believe it or not, we've had a ton of two-way action there. Nebraska, and again, a new coach coming in, Scott Frost, I think did a great job, obviously, at Central Florida. Again, he'll recruit really well, but I don't know about year one. Uh,
Right.
Chip Kelly at UCLA, West Virginia. We always seem to get a lot of West Virginia opinions both ways, and Wyoming and Wisconsin. And again, sometimes I just throw my hands in the air. I don't know why, but great two-way action on those teams, and I think that's always fun. When as a bookmaker, I remember. Yeah, I don't want to mention names. I used to work for one bookmaker many years ago. I put out a line so good nobody wanted to bet. Well, that's not a very good line. I'd rather have a line up where everybody wants to bet, and that's some of those teams I just mentioned. Uh, we've had a lot of action both ways, and that's always a lot of fun. And yeah, and I love college football. I love I love being a bookmaker and making the numbers, and I love the sport itself. Each and every Saturday, just watching the action is great.
Is this your favorite sport? College football?
I'd say, yeah.
And as far as a handle goes, is college football kind of your biggest moneymaker, or would it be the NFL or maybe college basketball?
No, NFL's still king,
Okay.
but I always laugh if you're down 21 nothing in an NFL game, game over. You could
Right.
be down by 21 in the fourth quarter of a college game, and you're still right in it. So that's what I love about it. So
No, absolutely, Chris. It's what I love about it as well. And I brought up handle. What about hold percentage? Where does college football kind of rank compared to the other sports?
well, it fluctuates, but it's usually pretty good, pretty similar to the NFL. Um, And those are the two big money makers I mean, I'm not just speaking for us. Almost any sports book would tell you the football's king. NFL probably number one, certainly as far as handling that. But college football is really coming close. I'd have to run the numbers again. College football last year may have surpassed the NFL. We had some huge weekends in college football, some great games. So I'd have to look. I might have passed the NFL last year. And the NFL, I hate to say, but sometimes a little bit boring on a lot of games. Whereas college football very rarely is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Chris. And I was actually going to follow up on why you think that is that college football's reeling in the NFL and maybe even surpassed them. Do you think it's gameplay? Do you think it's kind of the alumni base with something to root for? Anything to that off the top of your head?
Well, I think it's the excitement of the games themselves. You see a lot of different offenses mostly that go out there, and defenses naturally have to react to that. Whereas the NFL, everybody kind of runs the same offense. I mean, there's variations obviously, but there's nothing real drastic. Whereas I always like watching Air Force. They run that great triple option. They're a lot of fun to watch. Other guys have these spread offenses, and Alabama has kind of a pretty standard pro offense, and you could have a success with any one of those. So it's hard to say this one is better than that. And I think you've got to fit the personnel and the program, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think that's way more interesting. And evidently, I'm not the only one because a lot of people uh, do watch college football religiously. And come if you're ever in town, come here on a Saturday. First of all, you'll be lucky to find a seat. And we start out at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we go through the USC and Arizona State game at night, where the action is just nonstop and people love it. And there's probably guys sitting here all day watching the games, and we got in-game betting and all that other stuff. They just love it, and so do I.
Yeah, and do you have enough TVs to even get the small games in there, or is it all the big boys?
It's a challenge. We have 4 giant screens, which naturally the big boys usually take up those, and we got about as many TVs as you could fit. I don't even know what the number is all around the sports book, and we showed just about every game. There may be a Tulane Tulsa game that doesn't quite make the screens, but if we have
Right.
enough action on it, I promise you it'll be on. So like I said, it is a challenge, but we usually get just about every game on.
All right, great stuff, Chris. Well, yeah. Anything else you want to throw out there? Where people can find you? I know on Twitter at Andrew Sports, doing stuff there at the South Point Hotel and Casino. Anything else you want to throw out there?
Well, we're on VSiN. I know it's probably one of your competitors, but we're on that every
That's
day.
okay.
Uh, Vinny Mayolo, he's on pretty much, and Jimmy and I were Vinny usually on for like 2 hours. He can yak pretty good.
Yeah.
Uh, Vi- Jimmy and I get on for about 15 minutes, half an hour at a time, and Jimmy is just a treasure. He's I heard some guys call him an American icon, and he is that. So follow us on that. Follow us on Twitter, and come on by the South Point. I always get everybody. Flattery will get you everywhere. Come here and tell me be nice to me. You'll get a buffet almost for sure. And if you really want to take that, bring in your cash. Like I said, we don't say no to too many people at the counter. I'm sure somebody will come in and say, "Geez, I wanted 100,000 on the Miami, Ohio season wins over," and they wouldn't take the bet. Yeah, you're probably right. I wouldn't. But I remember taking a 10,000 one year from some guy who was Jimmy knew him. He was a guitarist in some band, and the rat beat me. So anyway, bring the money and we'll go from there. So that's all. We try to have a lot of fun. We don't take things too seriously here.
Well, good stuff, Chris. Appreciate you taking the time. Let Matt Yeomans, Gil Alexander, let them know I said hello. And yeah, give Chris a follow on Twitter at Andrew Sports. Stop by the South Point Hotel and Casino. And if you could give us a thumbs up, the like button on the video, that will help us out. And maybe if you could share on your social media networks, retweet on Twitter, we would definitely appreciate it. For Chris Andrews, I am Drew Martin. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you next Monday for another Marketology episode.